Wow, you all got coffee? I didn't get a coffee. I'm jealous. Hey, one more time. This time, just same thing, okay? We're going to take a photo. It's going to be great. Just pretend like you're happy. Oh, I've got other photos. Oh, hold on. Here we go. No, that's not working. Ding. I like this venue. I like the last one too, but this is cool as well. All right, look, my name is Josh. We don't have a lot of time, so let's dive right into it. I just wanted to talk about the latest and greatest. You know me. I feel like it's really important to kind of see all the stuff. And I think some of you have been here before. How many of you have been here last year? Okay, so a lot of you are new. Wow, welcome. By the way, I'm obligated to tell you that we're giving away, we have cards, okay? These are cards. Take some of these and pass them around. They're silly, I don't know what they are. You can go to the booth and collect more. The Tanzu booth, I'm told. I don't know what they are, okay? It's a card based on each speaker, and so you can get them all like Pokemon, okay? Okay, so anyway, my name is Josh Long. I work on the Spring team. I'm a Spring developer advocate, a Java champion, a Kotlin Google developer expert, alumnus, Microsoft MVP. I don't know how, okay? Don't ask me. No idea. I have a YouTube channel. We all make mistakes, okay? We all make mistakes. Mine, I am a YouTuber. And look, I'm not saying it's glorious or anything, but it does exist. So you can, the internet in Europe. Okay, here we go. This place is a YouTube channel that I run with my buddy, Deshaun Carter and James Ward. And there's me over there, right? So, join the adventure, like and subscribe, that kind of thing. It's not going to be the worst mistake that you make today, probably, okay? Maybe. Okay, it might. It might be the worst. I'm online. I have email. Who's using email? Anybody here have email? Email. No, good. Moving on. The Blue Sky. Who's using Blue Sky? Should I even bother? Yeah, like 10 of you. The Bird website. Yeah, one of you. And then the code. Oh, the code. This is old. Okay, hold on. We're gonna change this. It's the 14th, and then Bootiful Spring Boot. And I'll just call this 4, and we'll call this Spring.io. Okay, I'll put whatever code we create in there. Now, my friends, look, today I wanted to talk about some of the latest and greatest features in the world of Spring, and obviously to do this, we need to motivate this. And I think about this a lot, right? Because I want an example that we can look at. Obviously, we've all seen the Spring Pet Clinic, right? Pet Clinic here, and this is a sample application from the distant past. Here we go. But this application has been maintained recently. If you look at this, there's code that was just contributed to this just a month ago, last month, right? And that could have been 15 days ago and still qualify as last month. Who knows? So I like the Spring Pet Clinic, but we don't have a lot of time, and there's too much. In fact, if you look at this, here's the GitHub organization called Spring Pet Clinic, and there's actually a whole bunch of different implementations of the Spring Pet Clinic in different technologies, right? So who has time? But I do like the animals aspect. I like dogs and cats and whatever. And I think about animals all the time. In fact, if you get those cards, and I have more of those cards, by the way. I have like a lot more. Just come to the booth, okay? If you look at the card, there's a picture of me and our dog Peanut, who is no longer, sadly, he's no longer here. But he is kind of a spicy dog, He's a fun dog, but he's also quite problematic. And he reminds me of another dog that I learned about during the pandemic named Prancer, right? Prancer, the owner of Prancer, back in 2021, wrote an article describing Prancer. She says, okay, I've tried. I've tried for the last several months to post this dog for adoption and make him sound palatable. The problem is he's just not. There's not a very big market for neurotic, man-hating, animal-hating, children-hating dogs that look like gremlins. But I have to believe there's someone out there for Prancer because I'm tired, and so is my family. Every day we live in the grips of the demonic Chihuahua hellscape he has created in our home. And then she continues on. She says, he was quiet and just laid on the couch, didn't bother anyone. I was excited to see him come out of his shell and become a real dog. I'm convinced at this point that he's not a real dog, but more like a vessel for a traumatized Victorian child that now haunts our home. Right? And she continues on, and it's very funny, but at the end she says, oh, he's only 2 years old and will probably live to be 21 through pure spite, so take that into account if you're interested, okay? And I think about this dog a lot. First of all, because he's probably 7 now, not 2, but also just because he went viral, right? He went viral. Let's see, Prancer. Here he is. Here's like the New York Times covering Prancer, the demonic chihuahua, right? Here's BuzzFeed News caught up with Prancer, nightmare chihuahua, right? Like he went viral. So he did get adopted, but I want to build a service to help adopt dogs. So that's what we're going to do here today, my friends. We're going to build this. I'm going to call this adoptions because I'm amazing with names, okay? I'm great with names. I get that from my father. He was amazing with names. When I was a small boy, we had a small white dog, and my father named him White Dog, okay? Amazing with names. So I'm going to bring in the web support. I'm going to bring in Postgres. I'm going to bring in the DevTools support. I'll bring in the GraalVM native image support and the AOT support. I'll bring in the Spring Data JDBC support. No, that's session. I want data JDBC. Here we are. Okay. I don't need the session stuff, although that's very nice. I'm going to bring in the actuator. I'll bring in DevTools. Do I have DevTools? I think I just took it off. There we go. I'm going to bring in security. I'm going to bring in WebAuthn. Okay. So I'm going to bring in just a number of different things in here to build a simple application. And you'll notice that we're looking at the Spring Boot 4.x and Spring Framework 7.x releases. So there's a lot of interesting things that are happening here. I also want HTTP client support. Notice that this is a separate dependency. It used to be in Spring Boot 3.x, we had this thing called auto configuration. Auto configuration is the thing that allows you to start a brand new empty Spring Boot application and you have a web server. Or you have a connection to a connection pool, even though you've not written one line of Java code, right? Maybe you specified some properties. That auto configuration runs when the program starts up. Historically, there's been one giant monolithic auto configuration. Well, now in Spring Boot 4, we've decomposed the auto config. Now, the configuration for each starter lives with that starter. So if you only have one starter on the class path, then you don't have all the code from all the other starters on the class path, which in turn improves startup time and so on. But the other benefit of this is that we have more granular starters. So we can actually have like a starter for HTTP clients and a starter for Spring Web Server, right? To build an MVC service. These are two separate things. Before, you would have Spring Boot Start a Web that would bring in the REST client and the web server. But if you're building a Spring Batch application or a Spring Shell CLI application or a Spring integration or Spring for Apache Kafka or whatever, all these applications, they don't need a web server. They're headless. They operate in the back office sort of use case, right? So now you can have just an HTTP client even if you don't want the web server bits. And you know what? We're also going to bring in Spring Modulith because why not? So let's hit generate. And again, I chose Java 25. Remember, friends, we have 4 versions of Java, but only 2 valid choices, okay? This is the current long-term release version of Java. This is the current version of Java. And these other 2 versions we keep mainly to see who makes terrible life decisions, okay? So you should never, ever select these. Remember, Java 25 is technically superior in every way. It's faster, more robust, more syntax-rich, more performant, more operations-friendly. It's also morally superior, okay? You won't like the look of sadness and shame in your children's eyes when they see that you're using Java 8 in production. Don't do this. And remember, Java 25 is also mathematically superior, okay? It's at least 3 times greater than Java 8, okay? Simple math, simple math. It's just a fact. Hard to argue. Okay, hit generate. Open this up. Here we are. And we're going to connect to a database, so let's go ahead and do that here. Application.properties, waiting for the IDE to load. I did a presentation a few weeks ago with my friends James Ward, who's here, by the way, the legendary James Ward, my hero, friend, and mentor. He's here. And Dr. Venkat Subramaniam, the legendary Dr. Venkat Subramaniam. And Dr. Venkat Subramaniam, he said something when we presented a few weeks ago. He said, there are 2 types of developers. Those who have idea and those who have no idea. And I think that's a really, really brilliant thing to say. Okay, so let's see here, so we say Spring data source password is secret, right? And the username is my user. And the URL is JDBC bc:/postgres ql localhost my database, okay? Here we are, good. So there's our application. We're going to connect to a database, and we're going to build an application that talks to the database, okay? Oh, did I choose Groovy? I like Groovy, but I'm not very good at it. So let's undo everything we've just done. How did I choose Groovy by accident? Oh, that's scary. Okay. Don't worry, it's going to be fine. We've only typed a few lines of code anyway. All right. No wonder IntelliJ was like taking its time, you know? Okay, here we go. Good. Spring data source. It's still taking its time. Here we are. Maven. Oh, is it because of the Java code? How much you want to bet it's because of the JDK thing? Yeah, SDK, Java 25. Please. Maven, sync. Okay. Okay, when in doubt, delete. For the Spring IO, yes. Okay. You have to invalidate caches. It's okay. Oh, look at that, much better. Spring data source. Username is my user, and the password is secret, and the URL is JDBC. That's close enough. My database. Et voila. Okay. Very good. So now we're connected. I'm still going to call it adoptions. I don't care what ID it says. Okay. Here we are. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk to the database. So I've got a database running. I'm going to describe my entities using Spring Data JDBC. I love JDBC, right? I'm going to do that. String description. Okay. Whoop. Description. Okay. And I'll say @int ID. And look at this. I'm using Java records. I love Java records. Huge fan, right? Huge fan. Okay. I'm going to create a dog repository, extend the list of CRUD repository, who manages entities of type dog, whose primary key is of type integer. Very good. And you know, I'm going to create a simple controller to return information about the dog. So we'll say @controller, @response body, class dogs controller. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to inject the repository there. I'll say dogs controller. Like that, and I'll actually, you know what? I'll do it the old-fashioned way. Final dog repository, voila, add that to the constructor, create an endpoint, dogs, not digs, dogs, collection of map, of string, of object, dogs, okay? Look at that, .findAll, .stream, .map, and I'm going to take each dog, and I'm just going to return a view of the data showing the full name. So I'll just do Java lang object downcast so that it's lowest common denominator type, .name, and then the ID and dog.id, okay? And then toList. And then I'll say return, there we are, okay? This .repository, etc. Okay, very good. So I've got my simple controller. Let's go ahead and spin this up. Oh, wait, we got one more problem. Friends, I'm going to do something terrible, something you should never, ever do. And if you leave right now for whatever reason, and the last thing that you saw me do was to comment out security, just know, I'm going to bring it back, okay? The lesson here is not to comment out security, okay? Here we are. Good. Command-Shift-I. Reload this. All right. So now, localhost 8080 dogs. Voila. Okay, it worked. Of course it worked. It was a demo. It was always going to work. So there's that. This is fine, but you know, product management will come by and they'll change the requirements, and maybe we have a new endpoint, okay? We have a new version of this endpoint. So we go here, dogs, and we say collection of dogs. Return this .repository.findAll, and that's fine, but now I've got a new version 1.1 version of the API. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take advantage of API versioning in Spring Framework 7.0. I'll make this the 1.0 version, and then the new one will be 1.1, and I'll specify that the default is 1.1, and I'll specify that if somebody wants to override that, they can use a header or a media type parameter or a path segment or a query parameter. I think I'll use a header, okay? The header will be called xdogsversion, okay? So now, if I reload, I go back here, the default gives me the full details, right? But if I want the actual details from the old one, I can get that as well, -h, xdogsversion 1.0, paste that, and I get that as well. There's the full name, right? So that's the old version, and if I get rid of this, here's the new version, okay? So I have API versioning built into Spring Framework as a low-level thing. That's really convenient. Okay, so we've got this. We've got this low-level thing. I've got API versioning. You know, it can't all be about dogs, of course, right? Maybe we want to have an endpoint for cats, okay? So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do controller @response-body cats controller. And in order to do this, I'm going to call a third-party service to get information about cats. Okay, I'm going to build a client here. I'm going to inject the REST client here, like so, REST client, HTTP, add this to the constructor, and I'll just build it, just like you saw a million times before. Okay, and this is going to be a regular Spring Bean, no big deal, and we'll have the client, and then I'll have an endpoint here that returns, cat facts, and it'll return a collection, a cat facts array. So a collection of facts about cats. Okay, there we are. There we are. And now I'll say cat facts return this dot HTTP dot get dot URI HTTP localhost. It's actually HTTPS. Okay, www.catfacts.net/API.retrieve.body catfacts.class. Okay, so there's my very simple client, and I'm going to build a controller with that. I'm just going to basically just proxy the data, if you will. I'll inject that into the controller here, and we'll say at cat facts. Okay, here we are. Very good. Let's reload this. Oh, actually, I didn't need to reload it. It was already there. Cats. And now it's going to take its time, and there we go. Cats have fat in their diet, and according to myth, they might have, if they have their paws underneath, they'll have cold weather. Okay, great. So the website worked. We built a client. But that was a lot of code, wasn't it? I had to write all this code here to get that client right. And really, all I care about is this, and I want to map the JSON to this shape. Well, in Spring Framework 6, a few years ago, we introduced declarative HTTP service clients, okay? So we're going to take advantage of that. Cat, we'll just call this, there you go, exactly, right? And all I need to do is to make this work is I need to do get exchange, and then I put in the URL, okay? Very good. Paste. And now I can remove this. Now, in Spring Framework 6, unfortunately, this required a fair bit of configuration to make this work. It wasn't much, but it was just boilerplate. Well, now, in 7, you can say at import HTTP services. So cat facts client. Okay. That one. Good. And now if I reload, the same endpoint returns with the same data, right? Isn't that convenient? Very, very convenient. So we have this nice built-in, and I can delete code, which is my favorite pastime. Okay. Good. So now we have a client. Now look, this website, this service has been working every single time I use it. It has never failed. Oh, yeah. All right. It has never failed. That said, things are going to fail all the time, right? Last year, we had not one, but 2 amazing examples of this, right? Last year, US East 1 in AWS went down. And with it, half the internet went down, right? Look, I'm not blaming them. This is probably the best run data center on the planet. And if it can go down, everything can go down. And so we need to build accordingly. We need to build our software to be robust and immune to that kind of turbulence, okay? And so you saw Jürgen in the keynote. He talked about how we have pushed some very nice primitives for resilience into Spring Framework. And so we have @enable resilient methods. And then I'm going to go to my code, and I'm going to do something terrible. Normally, I would never do this, okay? I'm about to purposefully add errors to my code. Sometimes this is called PHP. Now, I would never do this otherwise, right? But I'll do it now to demonstrate what would happen if we throw an artificial exception, okay? So I'll say private final atomic integer. Okay, very good. Starting at 0, just to be sure. And here, I'm going to say if this dot counter is less than 5, okay? Throw a new exception, and I'll say new illegal state exception, no sangria, okay? io.println, oops, and then, yay, okay? There we go. So we want to make sure that even if there's an exception, if something should go wrong when we make the network call, that we retry this request. So I'll do retryable, max retries is 5, include this illegal state exception, okay? Let's restart this. And so now if I reload that endpoint, you go to the console here, this one, oops, reload, oops, 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 yay, okay? So it actually retried the same request, and we eventually got the response, even if the service is down. And you can schedule, you can do things like, exponential backoff and all that kind of stuff to make it more robust. The point is, things will sometimes go down. They might be in the middle of reloading. They might be in the process of upgrading. Whatever. You want to be able to retry. This is in the case that the downstream service is faltering for whatever. But sometimes you want to avoid being the cause of that faltering, right? That's a problem that you might have. And so one thing you can do is also to use concurrency limit so that you don't saturate the downstream service, right? Here, we're going to have a semaphore that basically limits how many threads can enter this method to 10, right? That's very convenient as well. OK, so we've got our robust declarative interface client. We've got our cats controller. We've got our dogs controller. I think we're doing pretty good. We've got API versioning. And so far, I've been creating objects, and I've been annotating them with @controller and @component and @service. You may know this, but it's worth restating that @controller is actually a meta annotation. In Spring, all annotations that declare components are annotated with @component. Okay, all Spring Beans. This is an implicit, I-M-P-L-I, implicit way of declaring and configuring your objects. Spring decides, based on the shape of your object, the constructors, the parameters, how to wire that object up for you. But you have to let Spring know how these objects get wired together, right? This is implicit. And anything can be a component, right? You can create your own meta annotation. I don't know if you know this, right? So I could say, let me see, google.com translate, okay, accept all, okay, bean. And then we want to take it to Spanish, frijole. Okay, there you go. So we're going to create we're going to take this code, okay, and there you go. There you go. So now we have our own custom annotation, a meta annotation that is itself a component. So if I annotate, let's say, let's create an object here, just a simple my runner implements application runner, right? And if I implement that, io.println, hola, okay. If I say @frijol, that's a Spring Bean, right? If I reload this, you'll see this gets run in the application. So we created a meta annotation. Hello. We created a meta annotation by using that component annotation. And everything is a component. So a controller is a component. A service is a component, right? It's a stereotype annotation, but it's a component. A repository is a component. And a REST controller is? No, it's a controller. You are all so silly. It's a controller. And that controller is a component, yes, right? So it's a meta, you can have a cascade, okay? So this is implicit configuration. Explicit is when you use Java configuration, right? I say over here, class my configuration, and I create a bean, my runner, and I create this Spring Bean as a part of the configuration class. And by the way, the configuration class is also a component. Right? If you look at the annotation, everything's a component. So there's the annotation. So if I'm going to comment that out, actually, if I leave that in, we might see the same bean twice, right? There you go. Same bean got registered 2 different ways, right? So that's fine. Maybe if I comment this out, go back over here, reload. Okay, there we go, just once. So you can register beans different ways, but the point is Spring eventually needs to know about how these objects are wired together. There are some limitations, however. If you use implicit, we pick the constructor. You have ways to help us decide by using qualifier and @autowired and things like that. But we generally, it's up to us to pick the constructor and construct the object, and we create a singleton unless you tell us otherwise, and so on. With this, you have full control. But it's a lot more code. It's 4 lines of code just to create the object, when really the one annotation could do the same job in this case. But you know, the choice is yours. If you have access to the source code, maybe you don't do this. Maybe you use @component. If you don't have access to the source code, you do something like this. But how do you create more than one of these, dynamically based on some config file, right? And what if you wanted to do it programmatically? What if you wanted to look at something in the environment and then decide to register something? There are ways to kind of achieve this, but there's a new way that I like a lot called a bean registrar. Okay, bean registrar. Implement bean registrar. Okay, add that, and this is a configuration class that you can register just like you would any other config class, right? @import, like this. Okay, and the registrar, by the way, you heard this in the keynote as well. You might have noticed it here. Notice that the argument here is it's beige, right? Same thing for the bean registry here. That's because this class is in the package, org Spring Framework beans factory. If you look at that package, in the package info, right? Where is package info? Oh, there it is. It's right in front of me. It's annotated with @null marked. This says that everything in the package is not null by default. And then if somebody wants to make something null, they have to opt into the nullability, right? So in very specific cases, we have nullability. So basically, the IDE is saying, hey, we're not expecting a null reference, and yet you have written the code in such a way that it might accept a null reference. If you want that to go away, you have to say, hey, I understand, no nulls, okay? No nulls for me. Good. So I've got this bean registrar, and I'm going to register a bean of type myRunner, okay? This is the simplest example. This is a implicit almost kind of approach, right? So let's comment out this one, and then reload. Go back here, and there's the hola again, right? Okay, so what if I do now a multiple, right? I could do a for loop. For var I is 0, I is less than 5, I plus plus. Okay, reload, command 5, there you go. There's 4 of them. Okay? So look at that. We're actually programmatically registering things with the system as we want. Now I can also control the construction of the object. Maybe my object has a constructor that I want to call. Okay? So I create a constructor here, and I'll say, string message. Okay? And I'll private final string message, and I'll just do this, and this dot message equals message. Okay? And then the other one will be this dot hola, okay? And now I have 2 different versions, and I'm going to print out the message either way. So this dot message, very good. So now what if I want to control the construction? Here I'm using the default constructor, but if I want to control it, I can do that as well. I can say, okay, var m equals hello number I, and I'll say spec dot supplier new function of, and then return a new myRunner, okay? Passing in m. Okay, now this is a little bit long in the tooth here. Let's lambdaify it, so much better. Love that. Look at that, much better, okay? So there's this, and now I can rerun this again. Go down here, and you can see it's printing out. It's now using our custom constructor as well. So we get the best of both worlds. You have configuration, explicit and implicit. Okay, so now we've got an application. We've got auto configuration. We've got custom dynamic bean registrars. We've got API versioning, dynamic clients, all sorts of good stuff. I think it's time to think about making this thing a little bit more production worthy. And one of the things I want to do is to make it more secure. So I'm going to go back to my old build here, start.spring.io. I'm going to bring back in some security here, okay? Here we are. Get rid of all this and that and that. And we're going to be using some of the latest and greatest in Spring Security 7.0, which also comes with Spring Boot 4. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to lock down every endpoint, okay? So at controller, at response body, class. No, I don't need that. I need actually, no, I do. I want that. Class me controller, at get mapping, / map. I said get mapping as I typed get exchange. Okay, no problems there though. Me principal, and then map.of name principal.getName, and voila. Okay, so I'm going to log. When somebody logs in, we're gonna see who's logged in there. Now I want to set up some users. I've got users in a database, and in Spring Security, if you want it to manage users for you, you have to define a bean of type user details manager or user details service. So let's say security configuration, okay? And I'll create a bean that points to our SQL database here. Return new JDBC user details. Okay, there's this. And when I go to the config, I can click on this command. There we go. Hit test connection, hit OK, hit apply, go over here, and you can see I've got some users in the system, right? If I go here, users, there we are. Oh, let me reset this, my friends. Hold on. Drop. Goodbye. Force refactoring. Goodbye. OK, so now I go over here, desktop, misc, talk, db, initdb, reload. OK, what that's going to do is it's going to recreate the database table with bad data, right? Not good data. So let's refresh. Here we are, tables. There's the users. And there you go. You can see we've got 3 users in there, but 2 of them haven't logged into the service in a long time. And they're using SHA-256. I don't know if you know this, but you should never, ever use SHA-256. It's considered insecure. It's basically cracked. Okay, so I would not use that. Bcrypt is pretty good. Argon is pretty good, so those are okay. But these old users, we want to convert their password. It's cracked, but it's not computationally efficient to try and crack it and then reverse engineer it and then migrate it. We want to migrate it to a new password encoding whenever possible. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up a password migration. Okay, so when the user logs in, when they have the plain text password in memory, we're going to update their password if the password matches the one that's in the database, okay? So let's reload this. And I go to localhost 8080 / okay? Now it's going to ask me to log in, Josh PW. Great, so that's logged in. Anything change? I don't think so because Josh was using bcrypt. That's the default. What about Rob and James? Let's go out here, okay? Incognito, James PW. Okay, and now, refresh, there you go. James and Josh are both using bcrypt now. It migrated the password on login. That way we're always moving forward to the latest and greatest. Secure passwords are good, but passwords are bad. Passwords are not a good way to do security, believe it or not. In fact, in certain governmental contexts, they're illegal. They're not considered secure. Why? Because so many bad practices exist. Things that we all take for granted as being like the one true way to solve the problem aren't actually that. One of the things we're often told is you need to migrate your password every 3 months or every week or whatever, right? How many of you get that? Do you get that email saying migrate your password? You know what most people do? I'm sure you do the right thing, but most people don't. Most people don't use password managers. And so what most people do is they get the old password, add one, save, done, right? Completely insecure. And so people are discouraged from using passwords because they're not a good proof that you are who you say you are. So what I want to do is I want to move away from passwords. One way I can do that is by configuring an alternative login form called one-time token, or one-time token. And I want to configure the default configuration for Spring Security. Normally, in Spring Security 6 and earlier, you would have to create a bean of type security filter chain, and you'd inject the HTTP security and all that. And as soon as you create this bean, Spring Boot backs off. The defaults that lock down everything and set up HTTP basic and form login and lock down all endpoints disappear. So now you're unprotected completely, which if you know what you're doing, it's fine, but it's not a great security posture, right? So in Spring Security 7, we have this thing called a customizer. And you can it's additive. You can add things to it. So I'm going to add a one-time token login, okay? And I'm going to say, when somebody logs in, attempts to log in, let them log in with this token. Now, you've seen this before, like with Slack. If you've ever used Slack, you know what I'm talking about. You enter your email, it sends you an email, you click on the link, you're in. Because they've verified that that email is you. And if you have access to that email, you must be you, right? You must be who you say you are. But this is not a password that you, as in your code, have to maintain. It's somebody else's password. It's Google or Outlook or whatever, right? Somebody else is maintaining the integrity of that password. So you still have a password, but at least it's somebody else's problem, not yours, okay? So I don't have time to set up an email server for you today to demonstrate this, or to set up Twilio or SendGrid or something to send text messages or something like that. But we're going to pretend I have email or I have something like that on my console, okay? So when the user logs in, I'm going to say right out, print line, print, I guess. You've got console mail, okay? And I'll say response.setContentType media type dot text plain, and I'm going to print out, please go to HTTP localhost 8080 /login /OTT token equals this one-time token dot get token value. Get token value, okay? There's this. So let's clean the code up a little bit and reload. And if I go to here, to this incognito window, now I have two ways to log in: username and password and one-time token. So I'll say, send a token, please. You've got console mail. Thank you very much. I know I do. And I've got this URL here. Okay, take that right there. Okay, paste. There we are. Sign in. I'm authenticated. Great. Okay, so this is a different way to log in, but it's still a password. It's just not my password. One of the nice things that we have in recent versions of Spring Security is a different, more interesting way to do this. How many of you have heard of WebAuthn. WebAuthn, or Passkeys. You might have heard of Passkeys, right? So Passkeys, where is my, well, actually, we can do FIDO Alliance. Passkeys are, every website on the internet is asking you to set up passkeys right now. And this is a technology, that's the product name for a thing that was created by a group of people. Where's the alliance here? A number of small mom and pop shops that are trying to make the internet a better place. Companies like Amazon, American Express, Apple, Chase, Google, Intuit, Lenovo, Meta, Microsoft, PayPal, etc. So what I'm about to show you works everywhere already. This is not like a hypothetical. It's already here, okay? It works on all the browsers in Linux, works on all the browsers on Mac. It even works on Windows. Windows. Can you believe it? I don't know if you've heard about Windows recently, but some small things have been broken in the recent months. Good news, they're small things. I'm told it'll be fine. Small things like the Start menu and the login and the file system and the Explorer. Those things are broken in recent months. So this works there, okay? Even on Windows. I can't believe it. So we're going to set that up here quickly. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say WebAuthn, allowed origins, HTTP, localhost 8080, okay? And I'll say RPID is localhost, and I'll say RP name, Spring IO, okay? And that's it, done. So let's reload. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go here, log in, okay? And it's going to say, hey, you want to log in with a passkey? The problem is, well, not the problem. The thing is, passkeys are managed, in my case, by the operating system. So I have to delete this passkey, and I need to now re-register another passkey. So I'll log in some other way. I'll just do this, Josh PW, okay? And now I'm going to go here to 8080 WebAuthn register, Spring IO, register. Oh, did I do localhost? I did localhost, yeah. Here we go. Sorry about that. Josh PW. And now I go here, and I'm going to register. MVP, sure, register. And now it's asking me to use my fingerprint, Touch ID on the Mac. This is public key cryptography. It's managed on the Mac, on the iOS Apple ecosystem by iCloud. It's federated. So I'm going to set up a Touch ID on my laptop, but when I go to my face, I can use my phone, I can use Face ID, right? Or I can double click on the watch. It doesn't matter. It's the same key across all the devices, okay? So I'm going to set up the key here. All right, registered. And now if you go back to here, you can see it's right there as well. And now I'm going to log out. All right, paste that in. And now I'm going to log in with my fingerprint. Ta-da, okay. So now I have a secure application. I'm using one factor to log in. Obviously, there are more, right? There are more things you can show. You might want more factors. You might want more than one factor at a time. One of the nice things in Spring Security 7 is we have enable multi-factor. There you go, that one. And I'm going to say authorities equals factor granted authority. Factor granted authority dot. I want to do, let's say, a password and a one-time token, right? OTT. There you go. So I'm going to require both factors to be present before I trust that the user is who they say they are. So here we go. I'm going to log in with the username and password. Okay, now I'm going to log in with the one-time token. And I go here, copy and paste this. And voila, log in with that, and I'm authenticated. Nice. So now I have a much better secure system. I have observability, I have the declarative clients, I have bean configuration, I have all that good stuff. I think I now need to get this thing in a shape where I can get it into production. And friends, here we're going to take advantage of the AOT subsystem in Spring Framework 6 and later. And we're going to turn this application into an application that runs well on Project Leiden. Right? You've heard of this. Leiden is a mechanism from the JDK. And in order for this to work, though, I need to specify a dialect. And the reason I need to specify this is because I'm going to do compile time code generation. And I need to know what dialect to use for my, the compiler needs to know what dialect to use when it turns my Spring Data repository into a concrete implementation, because that's going to be reified at compile time. So if I go here, for example, collection, dog, find by name, string name, okay? Hello, hello. Okay, good. So let's try this out. I have a script, okay? It's a script, and what it's going to do, if you look at this, it's going to compile the application, and then run the Spring Boot application jar in jar mode, extracting the AOT stuff. It's going to then run the application up until the point where it's about to start, and then capture information about the objects that are created, the classes that are created, et cetera. And then finally, I'll run the application with that profile that we've captured, that photograph that we've captured. Okay. Whoops. Let me stop it here. That might have ruined it. Okay. So it's running the application. This is a repeatable thing. You can do this on every single Java application, and the application now starts up. Well, in this case, what did I do wrong here? Oh, it must have been because I had that thing. Let's try that one more time, okay? We'll see. Maybe I just got this one wrong. Okay, running the profile. Well, there you go. There's the application. In this case, it didn't seem to make much of a difference. That's a bit of a shame. Okay, my friends, we have built an application that starts up reasonably quickly. That's basically the same speed as always. We have built an application that uses compile time code generation here. So if you look at the output of the target directory, forgot to show you this. This is one of my favorite features in Spring Data, the one included in Spring Boot 4. So sources, look at this. This is my repository. This is the code-generated repository. You can run this on the JVM in AOT mode. And notice that query that I wrote has been code-generated. That's what actually got generated at compile time. You can run this directly. You can put a breakpoint in that code and debug it. You can see how Spring Data translates your query into calls to the underlying persistent subsystem, right? It's an amazing result. So my friends, with that, this has been a very brief, abbreviated look at some of my favorite features in Spring Framework 7 and Spring Boot 4. Who learned something new? Very good. Who had fun? Me too. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Come by the booth, say hi. Come get a card if you want.